We hear there's agreement, at least within the caucus, on Senate Bill 5.
Well, we are still discussing within the caucus, but in working with the sponsor, Senator Jones, and Chairman Bacon, we will be making changes to the legislation. I think you just heard her announce, or heard the chairman announce that amendments are due in his office at noon on Friday. And specifically, we are looking at and will be making a change to allow state workers to bargain for wages.
Why have you made that change?
Well, you know, we've been listening to the testimony, and again, you've all been around for a while. This is a process, and so we put out a bill to address a very complicated and very important issue to the state. We listened to the testimony, and at the end of the day, our goal is to protect taxpayers. We want to do things that are going to give state and local governments more ability to control their costs, and we believe with this change we'll still be able to do that.
But wages include benefits?
They do not include benefits.
Wages only?
Wages only.
What about like vacation or sick time or other conditions?
Right now what we are discussing is strictly wages.
So this would involve whether the step increases and
That's correct.
those would be allowed to remain?
That's correct.
Have you come to an agreement on how you want to deal with binding arbitration?
That is still under discussion, and we do have some ideas on how to address that, and that will become clear as we flesh it out over the next couple of days.
Do you see any scenario in which the police and law enforcement would be taken out of the bill, carved out?
Too early to tell. I mean, we are looking at being fair with all state employees. We respect the work that the safety services provide, but as you all know, this is a process, and we debate. We listen to input from interested parties, and that's what we've done.
Is input from Governor Kasich one reason you've made this change?
No, this was something that was being debated amongst leadership and a number of our members. I'm sure you've all been pretty good at going out and talking to our members and getting a sense of what they liked and didn't like, and so this was something that we were debating amongst ourselves, and feel that this is a good move for us to make.
Would they still have the right to strike?
They would not. One of the changes we would make, they would not have the state workers would not have the right to strike.
So all they'd have the right to do would be to sit at the table and say, we want a wage increase? Or
Correct.
But they wouldn't have any leverage?
Well, they're still going to have civil service protections. And we are still discussing the, if we're not going to have, and we will not have binding arbitration, then what is that, next vehicle that provides them the opportunity to, take their concerns to a third party and have that addressed.
Could it be fact-finding?
Too early to tell.
So to be clear here, you are adding to the bill a provision saying state workers cannot strike.
That is correct.
I presume you wouldn't go forward with this without the governor signing on?
Well, I think the governor's been pretty clear from the beginning about his position, and I think our changes to the bill reflect what he has said publicly and reflect the concerns that have been expressed not only in testimony but by many of our members.
Do you believe that the Democrats really want to make amendments that will, I suppose in your opinion, improve the process, or do you think they're intent on killing anything you come up with?
Well, I'm not going to presume to understand what they want to do. I'm a person who hopes that they will engage in a good discussion, offer suggestions. It's what we've done with all the interested parties. I mean, frankly, one of the things that was very disappointing to me was to hear some of the groups say that they were not able to get access and couldn't have a seat at the table, and yet I don't know of one person, one group that's been turned away from my office, from Senator Jones's office, from Chairman Bacon's office, or for that matter, any member of the Senate. And so for people to say they have not had an opportunity to speak, to me is frankly disingenuous. Because we've had an open door for the last 2 weeks. We've asked repeatedly for suggestions, and I don't know what else you can do. It's been a very open process. I know, some people would advocate, well, let's just, shut down the hearings, let's go behind closed doors, and then, in the light of day, show up with a new bill. We've tried to be very open through this process and make sure that we heard all the voices. And tried to then sit down and over the next couple of days we'll be incorporating those concerns as part of the legislation.
Can you cite any power that state employee unions would have at the bargaining table other than just to say, this is what we want?
Well, they will have civil service protection.
How does that help them get wages?
Well, again, they will be able to collectively bargain for wages. So as a group, they will be able to sit down and talk about wages.
And if their employer, being the state, says no, then what?
Well, we are working on an alternative, that would allow them to take their concern to a third party, and then make a decision through that process. But that's still being worked out.
But
So
not binding arbitration.
It will not be binding arbitration.
But the third party would be determined. It would be something that's not in existence.
Well, it's something that will be determined as part of the legislative process. I mean, that will be clear. We will spell that out as part of the legislation. And Senator Jones has worked very hard on these provisions over the last couple of weeks, despite all the hours of, I think, 20-plus hours of testimony that she's been in there for most of that. She's been able to work on this, behind the scenes as well with interested parties and try to work these out.
Did we spoke to Speaker Batchelder about your changes to Senate Bill 5, and is he on the same page?
I mentioned to Speaker Batchelder that we were going to be making changes, but I'll be talking with him afterwards about the details.
Do you have a timetable now as to when you expect this to be voted out?
Well, right now what we're working on is getting the amendments in, and we'll spend the weekend going through amendments and then make some decisions on timetable.
Could there be a vote next week?
It's possible, but it depends on the work that we have to do this weekend.
Senator, you said that state workers could negotiate for wages. Would they be able to have dues deducted if they were in a union?
Our bill does not address that issue.
So what would happen? And there's been a court decision 20 or 30 years ago that said dues can be deducted.
Can or cannot?
Cannot, can.
Yeah, that's not addressed in our bill.